I'm Monte Bateman. I'm a lightning scientist with NASA, and I want to tell you how to help protect your shack from lightning. Remember, rule number 1, lightning cannot be prevented or eliminated. So my typical disclaimer is, lightning is unpredictable, there is no guarantee, use this at your own risk, and even if you follow our advice, we cannot be held responsible. Okay, so how do I figure out what needs protecting? This is actually a picture out of an old ARRL handbook. You draw a picture of your shack and everything in it. Then you draw all of the connection lines to the outside world. Power, phone, coax, Ethernet, anything that brings something in or out of your shack. Then you draw a red line around it, and whatever crosses that red line probably needs some kind of protection. Okay, so people want to know about, does lightning go up or down?
Oh, yeah.
And the answer is yes. So when there becomes an abundance of charge in a storm or in a cloud above you, air breakdown begins. And that creates what we call a stepped leader. And the stepped leader moves in jumps of about 50 meters. And it jumps 50 meters and pauses, another 50 meters and pauses, until it moves its way down toward the ground. So when it gets close to the ground, anything that's near the end of that leader will shoot up a streamer. So here I've drawn a house and a tower. So both of these launched up a streamer, but it only connects with one. And so here in white, which is really hard to see, is what we call the return stroke. So that means this leader has made a connection with ground, and then we get infinite current up. The leaders are very low current, so that means they're very low in light. You can't see them very well. You got to have low light cameras to see leaders. And that's because a cloud is an insulator. It's not an infinite source of charge. It only can dump out tens of amps. But the ground is an infinite supply of charge, so we can get 100 kiloamps off the ground back up that hot channel.
Move over here for me so I can get...
All right, so there are 4 kinds of hazards that we need to worry about as ham operators. Number 1 is static charging. Let's say you have a dipole out and the wind is blowing and you might get static charge on your dipole. So here's my suggestion for that. This is an old-fashioned coax switch made by Heathkit or others. And here's a ground lug. So you switch it to ground and it grounds all your lightning, your antennas, to discharge any sort of static charging. Static charging is not dangerous to people, but it could zap a receiver. So do not confuse this with lightning protection.
Okay.
All right, so now we go back to number 2, nearby lightning. So up here in the process, let's say this house launched a streamer. It wasn't part of the lightning flash, but that streamer could be tens of amps of current, which could still blast a ham radio. So this is what we're talking about for that process.
Okay.
So number 1 is what I call a trade name is a transorb. It's like 2 Zener diodes that are built nose to nose, so it can conduct in either direction. These are great for transit protection because they react very quickly, but they don't handle a lot of current. So what we recommend is that you couple a transorb with an MOV. MOV can handle a lot of current, but it takes them a long time to turn on. So you put these 2 together. This is not good for RF because it's got an enormous amount of capacitance in it and it causes a phase shift. But for RF, there's things like spark gap, and I just have a picture of an MFJ one because I like about this one, it has a replaceable spark gap tube. So once it's popped, you can change it without replacing the whole thing. Okay, so that's nearby lightning. Okay, near miss, let me back up, I said that wrong. Nearby lightning is, say lightning hits out on the other side of your yard and it's going to induce voltage into anything that's connected to your shack. Any wires act like antennas for the lightning energy.
Okay.
Then the near miss is the unsuccessful leader from that picture. And so this is a series of photos taken by a guy named Bill Otten, KC9CS, and he graciously put these on a website, which I borrowed. So you see here, this is the top of a tower. It's a tower that's laid over, and what we're looking at is the thrust bearing for the rotor. So he's put coax feed-throughs at the top of his tower. So that means all the shields from that coax are bonded to the top of that tower. Then at the bottom of the tower, he's got a plate, and the coax shields are all bonded together again at the bottom. So at the top and at the bottom, we've got them all bonded together, and then you see copper ground lead coming away from the tower. Now at the point of entry, here's a large copper plate, and again, all the shields are tied together, and there's a piece of copper that goes to the ground and comes back over here to connect with the tower. Now on the inside, on the back side of the wall, or the inside of the wall, here's a plate on the inside of his shack, and so every ground from everything and all of the coaxes are bonded together at this plate, and then there's flashing that goes back outside and ties back to this one. Perfect insulation. This guy did it right. So everything is bonded, everything is grounded, and the key is to tie all the ground points together at the point of entry to the building. All right? So I always tell people, look at what the pros do. This is a commercial radio station. This is a picture from the Polyphaser catalog. Not an advertisement for them, but it's a great picture. So here's a plate that has a bunch of hardline entry points, and then 4 wide, flat copper straps that go into the ground. Exactly what we're talking about. Bond all the shields together at the point of entry to the building, and then tie that to ground. And then ground everything inside to that as well. All right, so this is another picture. I like to show this picture. It was taken here in Alabama. You notice what it looks like when a tree gets struck by lightning. It lights up the whole trunk. But what's really interesting about this picture is right here next to the lightning flash is a leader that was not part of the lightning flash. That's a leader that was launched, and it's hard to see in the paper, but there's a parking lot light right here. It's also got a streamer onto it. So we got 3 streamers, and the lightning chooses 1. Okay? So for direct strikes, that's the worst case scenario. You want to convince the lightning current to take a path through the tower, because the tower can handle that current. 100 kiloamps is not uncommon for a lightning flash. So this is the same picture you've seen before. We're bonding the coax shields to the top of the tower. We want to make sure that the direct strike current goes through the tower and into the ground. Okay, and then people often ask me what makes a good lightning rod. And one of my colleagues, Charlie Moore, made these lightning rods. These are homemade, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch aluminum rods. He took to the machine shop and just had them rounded over into nice smooth ends. Did a competition. I used to work in New Mexico at a thunderstorm laboratory in the mountains. And so he peppered the side of the hill with homemade rods and interspersed commercial rods. Not one of the commercial rods took a strike that summer, and all of the strikes hit the homemade rods.
Oh, wow.
So I don't have time to go into the physics, but it has to do with corona emissions, and basically sharp rods shield themselves and not much else.
Okay.
And so the blunt rods are unshielded, and that's what you want. Okay? And again, part of a direct strike is if you have a rotor, you're not going to be able to bond the antenna mast with the tower because of the rotor, and so you can insert a loop of say number 6 wire from above to below the rotor. Again, trying to couple the energy from the antenna into the tower.
Cool. Okay. Perfect.